thinking methodology of thinking like a criminal, right? What would somebody do to replace that product, dilute it, So there's so many different ways that they can, work with it. Here we go again. Hello again, PCQI, and welcome back to our All About Compliance channel. In this segment, we're going to be covering FSSC 22000 review for food fraud mitigation. Now, the reference link and guidelines will be under the description, where we got these type of requirements and standards that we're going to be discussing in this video, as well as their recommended tools, free guides and whatnot. We're going to put them on the description for you to access should you need them. Now, this discussion is not a complete discussion, but it's a summary of the guidelines of FSSC 22000 standard. So please visit their website at fssc22000.com should you need certification services and guidelines that is applicable to the standards of FSSC 22000. So let's begin. So FSSC 22000 scheme requirements for the food fraud mitigation is a vulnerability assessment. And basically, let me read the requirements for this. It says, the organization shall have a documented procedure in place to conduct a food fraud vulnerability assessment to identify and assess potential vulnerabilities, develop, implement mitigation measures for significant vulnerabilities, and also have a plan. The organization shall have a documented food fraud mitigation plan specifying the mitigation measures, covering the process and products within the food safety management system scope of the organization. The food fraud mitigation plan shall be supported by the organization food safety management system. The plan shall comply with applicable legislation and be reviewed regularly. So in this plan, when you put this together, you're going to have basically all of the stated requirements, and then also the scope of it with your product categories as well as your suppliers. So during an audit on my side, when we're looking at these things, are we doing a vulnerability assessment, not just on the products and materials, but also in the supplier, if the supplier was involved in some sort of fraud activity, in the previous days or weeks, or maybe a year prior. Now, a lot of these things are going to be interlinking or interconnecting with your other program, but make sure your implementation procedures are in place, and they give us a wonderful guidelines here of what to do. Basically, here it is: implementation. To help implement the FSSC 22000 food fraud prevention requirements, the following way of working is recommended. Establish a food fraud mitigation team. So let me just make an add notes on the mitigation team. Any team that I work with, I always ask our PCQI team on site to have a primary, an alternate, and a substitute, because people go on vacation, or they'll take a PTO or some sort of an appointment to take care of their family. Maybe they're going to be out on leave and whatnot. So you always want to have somebody that's trained, that's an alternate or a substitute for your primary. Or just in case your primary, finds a different opportunity and they leave the team, then you don't have that gap to fulfill. Second part of the recommendation is conduct a food fraud vulnerability assessment, identifying potential vulnerabilities. So these are FFVA. So let's start mentioning it that way. Now, on the FFVA assessment that you're going to perform, like I said, if you can include your supplier, because I've seen in reports like Import Alert that the supplier was named on that, and we had a particular client that had purchased certain materials, but that wasn't performed previously by their FFVA team. That then the products or the shipment was held off at the border by FDA. They actually wrote them a letter saying that this will not be able to come in because of the import alert from the supplier's history. Okay, so please take a look at that PCQI. Okay, define the significant vulnerabilities. Identify and select a proportionate control measure for the significant vulnerabilities. Document the vulnerability assessment, control measures, verification, and incident management procedures in a food fraud prevention plan supported by the Food Safety Management System. Develop an effective training and communication strategy and implement the food fraud prevention plan. Now, if you go to interlinkiq.com, there's a module for food fraud vulnerability assessment that covers both suppliers and materials. And also, it comes with a training module. So if you need access to that, please contact services@interlinkiq.com. The customer success team will gladly help you in putting together these vulnerability assessment. Because sometimes you take a look at your ingredient deck, and we work with clients that has hundreds of these things, and it's just overwhelming for their team to perform them, and and they just don't have time or resources to perform those, and they just need somebody to give them a call and basically says, hey, this particular ingredient was involved in fraud activities. Here is our protocol in receiving that material, and also contacting that supplier if they were involved and whatnot. So there's a lot of support for you. And FSSC 22000 guideline, this particular guideline also has some tools that you can use should you wish to perform this yourself. So there's a note here that says address all types of food fraud defined by GFSI, which is substitution, unapproved enhancements, misbranding, counterfeiting, stolen goods, or others. Address all products from incoming goods, raw materials, packaging materials, to outgoing goods, semi-finished product, right? And then they have an appendix. We're going to do a separate video on that because that's another lengthy with a bunch of definitions on it and what you need to watch out for. So we're going to add that on a different segment of our discussion. Now, I put on the additional notes here, which I've talked about the team designation having a primary, alternate, and a substitute, and about the supplier and materials for consideration on your FFVA. And then review your receiving protocol, right? So it should reflect your FFVA findings. So part of this, I put this additional notes because sometimes when I'm doing a food fraud vulnerability assessment audit, you can clearly see the preventive measures, and maybe there's some warning signs there that's been recommended, by the food fraud vulnerability team to watch out for certain things in this particular material coming in. But then there's no receiving protocol for that. So the material comes in and nobody checks or follows up with those warnings about that material having some fraudulent activity history on it. So we need to, as PCQI, we need to be vigilant for that. I know we're not criminal investigators, but if these are been identified, we need to take that responsibility to basically put those protocols together, to take it to that next step for preventive measures. Okay. When conducting an FFVA, a number of factors shall be taken into account, such as economic vulnerability, how economically attractive is fraud, historical data, has it happened, detectability, how easy to detect routine screening present, access to raw materials, packaging materials, and finished product in the supply chain, relationship with supplier, long relationship or spot buying, certification through an independent sector-specific control system for fraud and authenticity, complexity of the supply chain, length, origins, and where the product is substantially changed / process. And then they have a note here that says many more aspects may be taken into account as deemed appropriate. A number of tools have been developed to assist companies in setting up FFVA. One of them is SSAFE, or SAFE, right? There you go. So I put the link for that as well if you guys want to take a look at that. But these are, customize these. I know there are tools that are out there that's been put together, such as this that I just mentioned and was provided by FSSC 22000 guidelines. So the thing with this one is when you're looking at these tools, you can develop your own based on your process. They made some some verbiage in here about your relationship with the supplier and whatnot. So you're gonna have to gauge that. But at the end of the day, the main thing here is you're assessing the vulnerability. Thinking methodology of thinking like a criminal, right? What would somebody do to replace that product, dilute it, So there's so many different ways that they can, work with it. We had a particular incident example from one of our overseas purchaser where the broker in between was basically diluting the product with tapioca powder. So and the only way it was found out was the finished product wasn't performing for the designated or intended purpose of the finished product. The performance kept on failing until we took a look at those raw materials, and they were practically 60, 70, 80% tapioca powder, right? So they're not fully authentic at that point. When defining a prevention strategy, the potential vulnerability identified under one shall be assessed for their significance. A risk matrix similar to HACCP can be used. Likelihood of occurrence, right, versus consequences. Profitability is an important factor of likelihood of occurrence. A prevention strategy for the significant risk shall be developed and documented. The plan shall be supported by the Organizational Food Safety Management System, or FSMS, for all its products, meaning that it shall contain system elements such as training, internal audits, management review, etc. So this is where I mentioned about the receiving protocol. So once these vulnerability assessment, we just don't perform them, right? You get them, and then certification auditor comes in. They said, "Oh, have you done your vulnerability assessment?" And you have this wonderful binder, or you have this wonderful software, or wonderful electronic records of these things, and then he goes down to your preventive measures, your how you detect it, and those are basically bird chirping, right? There's nothing there, right? So so what is that? It's no use, right? Or you have something, but there's no execution on what was found out. So take a look at those. I've had auditor ask, how are you detecting these things? Are you testing it? How are you identifying those? So be prepared to answer those questions. It's also added operational control measures, verification activities, corrections and corrective actions, responsibility, record keeping, verification activities, continuous improvement. So you need to add those in there. And they put some examples here as well, for that. Once you really dig deep on your vulnerability assessment, then you'll be able to grasp this entire program that they have. It's a wonderful guide to have. If you need a copy of the programs or templates for these, please connect with services at interlinkiq.com. The customer success team will basically give you a demonstration of the food fraud vulnerability assessment module. Okay, so recommendation for their food fraud prevention team and training. The FFVA is performed by a multidisciplinary team with wide range of expertise. So obviously, example, security, legal, purchasing, production, R&D, regulatory affairs, and quality. The composition of the food fraud prevention team is likely to be different than that of your HACCP or food defense team. Okay, so the composition of the team may involve or may evolve. Let me repeat that again. 3, 2, 1. The composition of the team may evolve over time as the understanding of the food fraud opportunity evolves. External expertise may be required. So, within in that comment, within the guide, we monitor FFVA, not just perform the assessment, but we actually monitor them on behalf of our clients, and then inform them if such event, regarding their involvement of their supplier or their materials have been detected. And then on top of that, we then review all their receiving protocols, make sure those materials that's been identified, the preventive measures when they come in are discussed, made part of the policies or the material testing, authenticating them, to be to be meeting the specifications from our client to the supplier, and also working with all the testing protocols in accepting that product, should they need it. Okay, so it's a complete service from that. Now, part of these guidelines, they also provided Michigan State University free web-based courses under MOOC Food Fraud Audit Guide. So I researched it, and it wasn't linked on the guide. So I found it and I put it on the link for our PCQI out there, that if you are curious what Michigan State University had provided for free. Okay, so take a look at that. Let me end the review for our FSSC food fraud mitigation segment. Till then, PCQI, once again, thank you for your viewership and your continued strength in protecting our food safety management system. If you need help, kindly contact us at services@interlinkiq.com or email me at info@consultaireinc.com. Till then, stay strong and have a good day. Bye for now. Contact us. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. Thanks again, PCQIs. Have a good one.